Hello quilters, today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable patchwork pouch. The pattern is located on the modafabrics.com website. It's called Patchwork Pouch. It is available just for you to download right straight to your computer and push print to have your own paper copy. So grab some coffee and some fabric and let's start sewing. For my variation, I'm going to be making mine with 10 rectangles, 2.5 by 5, a 14-inch zipper, some ribbon that is cut to 4 inches in length, a 9.5 by 10.5 piece of a lining fabric. Instead of piecing one like the directions say, I'm just going to use a single fabric. And then you need 2 pieces of a fusible interfacing that are also 9.5 by 10.5. Once you get your rectangles arranged the way you want them, knowing that the top row and the bottom row will be next to each other in the finished item, you can start sewing. Use 1/4 inch seams. Once you get your rows put together, it's time to press. I'm choosing to press my seams open for this, but if you want to do it where you press to one side, just make sure every other row goes the other direction. Now it's time to sew your rectangles together into a unit that will measure 9.5 by 10.5 when you're done. I've had a few people comment that my stitches look like they're really long when I'm sewing, but what I've actually done is just sped up the video of this so that it's going a little faster so that you don't have to sit through some really slow sewing. So I'm actually just using normal stitches. One thing I discovered about this little bag is it is the perfect size to hold my eyeglasses case while I'm traveling. It also makes a great gift and it's great for using up scraps of fabric. Now that the sewing is done, it's time to press. This time I'm pressing my seams all in one direction. Once you finish pressing, flip the unit over and then you want to press the 9.5 by 10.5 piece of fusible interfacing to the wrong side of that unit. You want to make sure that you have the fusible, the shiny side towards the back side of your pieced unit. You also want to press the other piece of the fusible interfacing to the back side of the lining fabric. Now it's time to assemble the bag. Lay the lining fabric right side up on a table. Lay your zipper right side up, center it and pin it to the lining. Now you want to take your pieced unit, lay it right side down, and make sure it matches on each side, and then you're going to pin that so that you're sandwiching the zipper between those 2 larger pieces. Once you've finished pinning, make sure that all the raw edges line up together and that it's pinned correctly. I have not opened the zipper at this point. It didn't seem necessary to have it open yet. And here you can see how it's sandwiched in between the 2 pieces. For sewing the next section, you're going to want to use your zipper foot. And when you put your zipper foot on, you want to make sure to move the needle over so that you don't break your needle when you start sewing. You want it to be on the left side. Now it's time to sew that seam. You want to make sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. Make sure to remove the pins before you sew over them. You don't want to break your needle on a pin. As you can see now, I have the zipper sewn in between the 2 pieces, the lining and the top side of the bag, you want to just do a quick finger press and press the fabrics away from the zipper. Now it's time to sew in the other side of the zipper. Fold the raw edge of the pieced unit to the other side of the zipper so that raw edges are together and pin into place. Turn the whole thing over when you're done and do the same thing with the lining, making sure the raw edges all meet up at the top. Once you have it pinned, it'll look the same from both sides when you're holding the zipper. You have the lining on one side and the piece section on the other side. Once you know you've got it pinned right, now it's time to sew the seam. You want to make sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end of this seam. Now that you've sewn the seam, you will have the lining on one side and the piece section on the other side. You want to go ahead and open the zipper all the way open. Turn the whole thing right side out and finger press those seams that are near the zipper on the other side. Now that you have finger pressed, it's time to close the zipper about halfway. Now is the time to make sure the bag will lay flat, and make sure you check the inside that all the pieces are laying flat all the way to the edges. Now it's time to add the ribbon for the little handle. You want to fold it in half, raw edges together, and I sew it into place so that I know it's tucked in there and it's not going to come out while I'm sewing the last seams. For this section, I'm going to use my open toe foot so I can see exactly where I'm sewing. The pattern directions only call for putting a ribbon on one side, but I thought it would be handy to have the ribbon on both sides for opening and closing the zipper, so I put in a ribbon on the other end also. I pin the zipper out of the way so I won't accidentally sew into it, and then I put my raw edges together. My ribbon is folded in half, and I'm going to tack that into place so it won't fall out when I'm sewing future seams. Now we can sew our ends closed. We're just going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. I've got my open toe foot on still, and I'm going to sew a little bit slower when I'm going over the top of the zipper so that I don't break my needle when I'm doing that. Once I've sewed the seam and I get to the other side, for bags I like to flip the bag around and sew it one more time just to make sure it's extra sturdy. Before you go and sew the other seam, make sure that your zipper is partway open so that you don't accidentally sew the bag shut without a way to open it. I've double checked that my zipper has been open, so now I can sew the other end of the bag shut. Now it's time to cut away the parts of the zippers that you won't be needing. And so I usually just get out an old pair of scissors, something that I don't use on fabric. You don't want to use your fabric scissor for this part, and cut those pieces off. Now that you've got the zipper parts cut off that you don't need anymore, you want to reach inside and open the zipper all the way. While the bag is still lining side out, you want to fold down the ends, make them look like a square where the zipper is on one side and the bottom of the bag is on the other. And you want to do that to both ends. And then you're going to sew the corners. You're going to sew 1 1/4 inch from the tip on both sides of the square. I will usually sew the seam once all the way across, and then I go all the way back to the beginning, back stitching, and then I sew it one more time just to make sure it's extra sturdy. You'll want to go ahead and do all 4 of those corners. My open toe foot is still on, so I'm going to do a zigzag just to the side of the straight stitching. That way I'll have a nice finished edge when I trim the seam down. I'm going to make sure I do this to all 4 of the corners. I've got the seams sewn on all 4 corners and the edges trimmed to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I can turn the bag right side out and see how it looks. As I'm turning the bag right side out, I make sure I poke out those edges so that everything looks nice and tidy. I think these bags are a great use of leftover little pieces, or if you wanted to get a charm pack to make a bunch of matching ones, you could make 4 to 8 of these bags out of one charm pack. I am glad I added handles to both sides of the bag to make opening and closing it a little bit easier. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed our tutorial, and hit subscribe if you'd like to see more in the future. Thanks for watching, and happy quilting!